Have you ever noticed how some people don't need to raise their voice or argue, yet they somehow change the energy in the room just by withdrawing? They don't chase. They don't explain. They just go quiet, and suddenly everyone else is paying attention. People start wondering, worrying, reacting. Now imagine if you did that. What would happen if instead of reacting to everything immediately, you just didn't? You chose silence over snapping back. You pulled back instead of exploding. That's where it begins with restraint. Because when you stop being constantly available emotionally, mentally, physically, the world around you doesn't know what to do. People start to scramble. Not because they care deeply, but because they've gotten used to controlling you through your reactions. When you're predictable, when you're always accessible, you become something they can manage, even manipulate. But the moment you step back, the dynamic flips. Suddenly, the people who thought they knew you realize they never really did. Carl Jung once said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." Let that sink in. So the question becomes, when you go quiet, who gets uncomfortable? Who gets irritated? Who starts poking at you just to get you to respond? That right there, that's a mirror. It's not about you, it's about them. But it also reveals how much you're still allowing yourself to be influenced, even owned by people's expectations and needs. We overextend ourselves. We say yes when we want to say no. We reply instantly to messages we didn't want to get. We give emotional energy to people who wouldn't hold us if we were breaking down. And every time you do that, every forced yes, every automatic response, every emotional reaction, it costs you. You hand over a little piece of yourself. No wonder you're tired. No wonder you feel drained. You're giving too much of yourself to people who don't even deserve a minute of your silence. But let's be clear, this isn't about becoming cold or selfish. It's about choosing yourself. It's about what Jung called individuation, the process of becoming whole, real, and rooted in your own truth. And do you know where that journey often begins? With silence. Silence is not weakness. Silence is not giving up. Silence, when it comes from awareness, not fear, is power. So let me ask you straight up, how long will you let your emotions be a puppet show for other people? How long will you react every time someone pokes a wound they didn't even help heal? Maybe it's time to cut the strings, to stop being the easy read, the open book, the go-to fixer, to stop giving people access to you just because they expect it. Because here's the thing, we've been taught since we were kids that we have to show up for everyone, respond fast, keep the peace. Please, serve, help, prove. We've been trained to think our worth is tied to our availability. But the truth, that kind of availability, emotional, mental, even physical, isn't noble. It's a trap, and the more you buy into it, the more people treat you like a convenience. A button they press when they need comfort. An emotional vending machine. A tool. You don't notice it at first, because it feels good to be needed, until you realize people don't really want you. They want what you provide. Validation, attention, presence, relief. But the moment you change, the moment you stop giving, they vanish. Or worse, they punish you for it. That's why you keep giving, because deep down you're afraid. Afraid they'll leave. Afraid they'll be mad. Afraid they'll call you selfish or cold. But more than anything, you're afraid they'll stop loving you. Carl Jung talked about something called the persona, the mask we wear so others will love us, accept us, validate us. That mask is how we survive socially, but it's also how we lose ourselves. You smile when you're breaking. You text back while exhausted. You explain, justify, apologize. Like you owe the world something even when the world hasn't paid you attention in days. The truth is, the more you try to be there for others, the more you vanish from yourself. Constant availability is a subtle form of self-abandonment. It's a hidden strategy, a way to avoid rejection, win approval, stay useful, But it doesn't work. And the price you pay is massive. Because the more accessible you are, the more predictable you seem. And everything predictable eventually gets used, not loved. People won't value what's always there. They'll only see it when it's gone. So here's the hard reset. Who truly deserves your time? Who actually earns your attention? Who's asking for your presence? And who deserves your absence? That last one stings, but it's real. Before you answer, though, we've got to go even deeper, because it's not just about boundaries. It's about energy. Why do we react so much? Why do we give so easily? What are we running from? The answer has to do with something Jung called psychic energy. And that's what we're going to talk about in the next part. Because your energy is your currency. And if you don't protect it, someone else will spend it for you. Carl Jung didn't see the human mind as just a machine that reacts to life. To him, the psyche was more like an energy system, and everything you think, feel, and do uses up some of that energy. The real question is this: are you choosing where your energy goes, or is the world choosing for you? Because every time you respond to something you didn't need to, every time you defend yourself against a comment that didn't even deserve your attention, every time you explain, argue, chase, or try to prove yourself, you're burning psychic fuel, and it's limited. You're not exhausted because you're weak. You're exhausted because your energy is leaking everywhere it shouldn't. Think about it. You respond to a provocation just to protect your ego. You jump into arguments that go nowhere. You try to fix people who don't want to be fixed. You try to be nice to people who drain you. And all the while, your inner tank is running dry. Jung famously said, "That which you resist persists." And he was right. Because when you react, especially emotionally, you tie yourself to the very thing you're trying to escape. Now let's get brutally honest. How many times have you lost sleep over a conversation that ended badly? How many hours have you wasted replaying a scene in your mind, thinking what you should have said? How much emotional real estate have you given to people who wouldn't give you 5 seconds of real presence? This is what happens when you don't guard your psychic energy. You spend it on people, problems, and patterns that don't give anything back. And here's the twist: people can feel it. They can sense when you're always available, always apologizing, always giving, always responding. And that's when they take control. That's when you attract manipulators, takers, opportunists. Because when you don't know how to protect your energy, other people will use it against you. Not always in obvious ways. They won't all scream or demand. Some just poke you in exactly the right spot and boom, you react. You think you're in charge of your reactions, but often you're not. Most of your emotional responses are programmed. And the people who understand this, they become experts at pressing your buttons. Carl Jung called this psychological process projection, when others project their fears, shame, or shadows onto you. But there's another layer that's just as dangerous. While others are projecting onto you, you're becoming the perfect canvas. You're playing the role. You're holding space. You're being the good friend, the fixer, the always-there partner. But here's the kicker. They're not relating to the real you. They're relating to the idea of you, to the role you keep performing. That friend who only calls when they're falling apart. That partner who wants you to fix every storm in their life. That person who sings your praises, but only while you're being useful. None of that is love. It's need. It's convenience. It's manipulation dressed as intimacy. And why do we fall into these roles? Why do we keep playing the part? Because we're scared. Scared of not being loved. Scared of being rejected. Scared of being seen as selfish. Scared of being alone. But here's a hard truth. The most powerful form of manipulation isn't force. It's guilt. It's when someone makes you feel like you owe them a response, that you're supposed to be there, that being a good person means being emotionally available 24/7, even if it tears you apart. But real love doesn't demand your destruction. And real relationships don't collapse when you set boundaries. Manipulative people don't need to control you overtly. They just need you to keep reacting the same way you always have. So they test you. They poke. They provoke. They guilt trip. They hint. They go silent. They blame. All to pull one thing from you, a reaction. Because when you react, they win. You're back in the loop. And the loop serves them, not you. But the moment you stop playing, the moment you say no without explanation, or go quiet instead of defending yourself, or walk away instead of getting dragged in, the entire structure begins to collapse. That mask they put on you, it falls off. The version of you they constructed, gone. And that makes people very uncomfortable. Because now they have to confront something much harder than your silence themselves. Your unavailability isn't just a boundary, it's a mirror. And for some, it's a brutal one. Because it reveals how much they depended on your chaos, your guilt, your energy. They might lash out, criticize you, call you distant, say you've changed. But don't be fooled. You didn't become worse. You just stopped being useful in their emotional script. Jung once said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." And when you step back, when you stop reacting, the darkness starts to surface. But it's not yours. It's theirs. And they can't dump it on you anymore. But here's the deal, that silence you're stepping into, it's not easy. Because it comes with misunderstanding, with rejection, with discomfort. Are you ready to deal with that? Are you ready to be called difficult, cold, distant, just because you finally stopped being an emotional vending machine? Are you willing to let people walk away when you start protecting your peace? Because here's where it gets real. Silence, when used consciously, is one of the most powerful psychological weapons you have. And that's what we'll explore in the next part. We'll go deep into why strategic silence doesn't make you passive. It makes you unshakable. And how this kind of silence doesn't push people away. It reveals who was never truly with you in the first place. Let's talk about silence, real silence. Not the silence of defeat or of giving up. I'm talking about the powerful silence. The silence that makes people nervous. The kind of silence that flips the entire emotional script. We live in a world where noise is constant. Everyone's posting, responding, arguing, defending, debating. Silence in this age feels almost dangerous. But that's exactly what makes it powerful. Silence doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean indifference. It means you've chosen not to waste your energy. Because when you're silent, you're not absent. You're fully present, just not in a way others can easily control. Jung understood this. He saw silence not as emptiness, but as a space for transformation. He knew that real inner change doesn't happen in the middle of noise, it happens in stillness. When you stop reacting, when you choose quiet over conflict, you start to see. You notice patterns. You spot manipulation. You recognize dynamics you used to be blind to, and that's the first step to breaking them. But here's what's wild. A lot of people don't panic because you left the conversation. They panic because they can no longer control the narrative. As long as you're talking, explaining, defending, they know how to respond. But when you go silent, you change the rules. And that terrifies people who rely on your reaction to feel powerful. Because the moment you stop reacting, they're left with themselves. And most people aren't ready to face that. That's why you'll get pushback. People will say, "You're cold. You've changed. You're not like you used to be." But remember, they're not mad at who you are. They're mad at what they can't control anymore. The truth is, as you grow, you become more selective with your energy. You realize every word, every reply, every reaction is an investment. And not everyone deserves that investment. Sometimes silence is not retreat. It's sovereignty. It's the language of people who've outgrown performance. And yes, silence is uncomfortable. Not just for others, for you too, because silence forces you to sit with your own truth. It removes the distractions. It removes the false peace. But you know what replaces it? Clarity. Power. Peace that isn't borrowed, peace that's yours. You don't owe anyone an explanation for your silence. Your absence explains itself. And the way people react to that absence, that's your mirror. You'll see who only valued you when they could reach you anytime, who needed your emotional chaos to stabilize their own, who stayed close not because of who you were, but because of what you provided. And when that falls away, when the roles dissolve, that's when you start to see who you are without the noise. That's the start of something rare. But I won't lie to you, it's not easy. At first it feels like loss. You'll question yourself. You'll wonder if you're pushing people away, being too harsh, too distant. But you're not pushing people away. You're pulling yourself back. And in that space, that sacred silence, you rebuild. You start to reclaim your energy. You begin to feel what's yours and what never was. You stop being everyone's emergency contact and start being your own healer. Carl Jung said that the path of individuation, the process of becoming your true self, requires that we distance from the collective. It requires that we disidentify from the mask, that we walk alone for a while. That solitude you're feeling, it's not a punishment. It's a recalibration. You're not running from the world, you're returning to yourself. You're moving from being reactive to being creative, not in the artistic sense, but in the power sense. You're no longer shaped by circumstances. You begin to shape your life from the inside out. And yes, people will leave, but they were never really there for you. They were there for the role you played. So when the role disappears, so do they. Let them, because what you find in that space is you, not the version of you they preferred, not the you that performed, pleased, or proved, but the real you. The one who knows your value doesn't come from being needed, it comes from being whole. You'll stop accepting emotional crumbs. You'll stop engaging in manipulation dressed as love. You'll stop letting chaos knock on your door and call itself connection. You'll only say yes to what supports your peace, what aligns with your truth, what recognizes your wholeness. And you'll start to realize you don't need a crowd to feel worthy. You don't need validation to exist. You just need to stand in your own truth, even if that means standing alone for a while. Because when you stop betraying yourself just to be loved, that's when real love, if it comes, can actually meet you where you are. So let me ask you this. Are you ready to be misunderstood? To be rejected? Even to be hated? Just for protecting your peace? Are you ready to pay the price of being you? Because make no mistake, it comes with a price. But the reward is freedom. And if you've made it this far, I believe you're already on that path. You've already started to choose yourself. So if this message spoke to something deep inside you, type it in the comments right now. I choose my peace. Let's see how many of us are done performing, done pleasing, done pretending. Let's see how many of us are ready to walk the path not of perfection, but of presence. And hey, don't stop here. Keep watching the next video. It matters more than you think. Because your transformation is just beginning. I'll see you there.